Welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse, and it is wonderful to be with you live tonight. Unfortunately, tonight's show is a pretty serious topic. It's disturbing, it's depressing, it's angering. Tonight we'll be focusing on the rape of Europe. What's happening with the migrant crisis, the mass immigration going into Europe, but also what's happening once these immigrants are interacting with the people of Europe, the natives of Europe. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is a massive spike in rape, specifically of white women, white European women. And a lot of these women aren't even women, they're children. And so we're going to be diving into this tonight. And a lot of this, the reason for this discussion has to do with Elon Musk, and his latest focus is calling out the cover up and the scandals, specifically what's happening in England under Starmer. And so we're going to be highlighting and kind of going over the timeline of these back and forth, between him and other people over in Europe, and how that's changing what's happening specifically in England. And this is a topic, though, that we have to be looking at because here in America, with the open border that we have, we're witnessing our own issues with this. It's unfortunate that we're seeing relatively common headlines of young 14-year-old girl found killed under a bridge or whatever, and oftentimes you find out that these are from illegal immigrants coming in, and it's just what happens. Like, look at what happened with the Haitians in Ohio, right? Eating the dogs and the cats. I mean, this is literally what happens. As much as there's a lot of people, they're all about multiculturalism and America is the melting pot. Well, what happens when you take all these different cultures and you shove them into one place and you expect them to get along well? It just doesn't really work that well, unfortunately. Um, Maybe you'd say, "Oh, Seth, you're such a white nationalist." Well, I am white and I'm a nationalist, right? Like I believe in America. Like my show is called Man in America. I was born and raised in America, and this country, my blood is red, white, and blue. I'm a diehard American. I'm a patriot. I love this country, and so I would say I'm much more of a nationalist. I'm not a big fan of globalism, as you probably understand that as well. So before we jump into the show, though, I got a few quick notes. First off, if you're watching for your first time, welcome. It's nice to meet you here. I do these shows 4 or 5 times a week, and my focus with Man in America is just trying to understand what's going on with this insane world and trying to make sense of it and trying to do it in a calm and rational way so we can make sense of this battle between these globalists and this cabal and these elites. And we the people that by and large, we just want to live our lives. We want to raise our children and own some property and work hard at a job that we can use to support our families. And we're actually quite simple. It's funny that we're actually very simple. I'm a very simple guy. However, there's this small group of evil people that want to try to destroy us, and so that's angered a lot of simple people like myself. That's part of why I'm doing this show, is to expose these plans and fight back against them, and but also to find hope and wisdom and reason that can help us get through this. Because, like, look, I've got a 4-year-old and soon to be an 11-month old, right? So I've got a little baby and a 4-year-old, both little girls, beautiful little girls. June is my oldest and Grace is our youngest. And I want this world to be one where they can grow up. I want America to be a country where they can grow up in and be safe and walk down the streets and not worried about violence or crime or rape or anything. And so that's what I'm here for. Just a few quick notes. So, one thing, in talking about, as we're entering into, 2025 and Trump coming in, I just want you to kind of walk through something with you. I want you to imagine a future where your wealth is untouchable, a future where every decision that you make today creates a foundation of security for tomorrow. So, right now, optimism fills the air. As a new chapter under Trump, opportunities seem endless. Markets are high, spirits are high, but beneath the surface, whispers of change grow louder. Policies, tariffs, global shifts are shaping a new economic landscape. The US dollar is barely holding on. You have this massive de-dollarization campaign that is just picking up. It's not going away, right? And so what happens when the world questions the place of the dollar? What happens when nations turn away from familiar and towards the uncertain? Gold and silver are different. For centuries, they've been an anchor in the times of change, a hedge against inflation, a shield against volatility, a sanctuary when the world feels unsteady. So precious metals don't follow the tides. They remain steadfast, unyielding, and enduring. So folks, imagine your wealth secure, your future unshaken. This is the promise of gold and silver, tangible investments free from the whims of politics and markets. The time to act is now. While optimism reigns and markets soar, remember that true wisdom comes from preparing for what others cannot see. Gold is not just an investment, it's your anchor, your protection, your legacy. So folks, take the first step in securing your future. And there's no better company to work with than Noble Gold. So folks, protect your future now. 626-654-1906 or visit goldwithseth.com to get your free gold and silver investment guide. Again, at 626-654-1906 or goldwithseth.com where you can get that free investment guide. All right, so folks, jumping into the show today. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of background of the immigration in Europe. Now, here I have a video to show you. This is from the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban. Right, so this is a post by Mario Nawfal over on Twitter, who says, George Soros, the billionaire behind the EU migrant crisis. So I'll give you this quick summary, then I'll play the video for it. It's about 2 minutes long. Hungarian PM Viktor Orban exposed how Soros told the EU it had to accept millions of migrants. Quote, Mr. George Soros published his plan in English in the Project Syndicate publication in 2015. He said very clearly that, quoting again, the EU has to accept at least 1 million asylum seekers annually. So this is why the story is not just about migration. It's about how this European Union is working and how George Soros was able to capture the main positions inside many institutions of the European Union, buying out MPs and other leaders and in order to execute the plan. So I'll play this for you. It's about 2.5 minutes, but this is important because, as you know, if you watch the show, I like digging into issues and figuring out what's going on with something and breaking down the information that we have. But I'm someone that I'm trying to okay, how does this fit into the big picture, right? So obviously we're talking about this, the rape crisis that's happening across Europe. What's fueling it? It's like, oh, okay, well, there's some wealthy billionaires that are moving some money around and causing all kinds of turmoil. And we know that the end goal is some sort of globalist plan to unite all the nations into one world government, and maybe with different regions that they're managing. But to do that, they have to collapse the individual nations. And immigration, especially when you're taking people, from say Pakistan or Uzbekistan or various regions where you have very different ways of life than say London. So if you take a whole village out of Pakistan, goat herders or whatever they're doing in Pakistan, and you put them into the deep suburbs of London, it's like taking red ants and black ants, throwing them into a jar and shaking them up, right? Eventually, there's going to be fights breaking out, and there's different cultural issues. We'll be diving into that. So again, the migrant crisis, if you go down far enough, what you realize is that it's part of this overall plan of destabilizing individual nations. I'm not going to get into too much detail beyond that because that's not the focus of the show, but I at least want to start with the bigger picture. So I'll go and play this video now this is from Orban.
I do remember how Mr. George Soros published his plan in English in a Project Syndicate publication. It was done 2015, September 26th. And he published a plan. He said that I'm quoting, here are the 6 components of my comprehensive plan. I just quote 2 or 3 points of that. First is, he said very clearly, 2015, that, quoting again, EU has to accept at least 1 million asylum seekers annually. That was the first point. Second, he said, adequate financing is critical. And he proposed to issue long-term euro bonds for financing the migration crisis and the migrants' social and welfare taking care when they arrive to the European Union. And another point which is very important for Hungary, which is involving the territory of Hungary directly into this program, he said that, quoting them, safe channels must be established for asylum seekers, starting with getting them from Greece and Italy to their destination countries, which means to bring them to Greece, to Hungary, and then have them to go to Austria. So don't forget that what we are speaking about is not an accidental stories, not a bulk of 10 years of accidental stories. It's a plan which is going on. It was written, it was published, it's known. So we are fighting again an organized gang called Empire of George Soros.
So basically, as he says, we're fighting an organized gang called the Empire of George Soros. Now, we know that Soros has been behind a lot of the things that we've seen here in America. A lot of our, DAs and key political positions have been put in and financed by Soros, and they're really controlled by Soros in many ways, because he who has the gold makes the rules, right? And so that's what happens, right? It's one of the problems with when you can buy people, unfortunately, and if you can't buy them, you can blackmail them or work with Epstein or Mossad or CIA, which I think are two wings of the same bird, and these intelligence agencies to basically gain control over a country in this way, unfortunately. So kind of continuing, though, I want to pull up this tweet from Peter Sweden, because this gives, I think, a good just overview, okay, of what we're going to be talking about. So Britain, 250,000 young girls were systematically raped by grooming gangs. Authorities covered it up and sent people to diversity training courses for talking about it. Police arrested fathers who tried to save their daughters. Media destroyed the lives of the people who dared to expose this. And Tommy Robinson is currently in solitary confinement. He's been calling this out a lot. He says, this is the biggest scandal in Britain perhaps ever. Protect the children now. So I want to take a look and just kind of go into some background on this overall situation, because a lot of this isn't, recent. Like, it wasn't like there was a key attack 3 days ago and all of a sudden everyone's focused on it, right? Actually, what it had to do with, I'll pull up right here. So here's the timeline. So this is a grooming gangs scandal timeline. What happens, what was involved after Elon Musk accusations. So it says, Sir Keir Starmer was the head of the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, for 5 years when grooming gangs were being investigated. All right, so there he was earlier on in his career. So it says the grooming gang scandal is back in the headlines after Elon Musk attacked Sir Keir Starmer and Minister Jess Phillips for failing children. It says the tech billionaire has accused Keir of being complicit in the failure of authorities to protect victims and prosecute abusers, while the PM was the director of public prosecutions for 2008 to 2013. So Keir has hit back at Musk, and I'll go into that, saying that his records show that he tackled the issue head on. So it says the row started after it was revealed last week. So the conflict started after it was revealed last week. Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips rejected calls from Oldham Council for a government inquiry into historical grooming gangs in the town, with Miss Phillips saying the council should lead an inquiry instead. So this is, I guess, the spark that kind of set this off recently. The discussion about this is that this council in Oldham had requested wanted to do an inquiry into these grooming gangs. And so then Jess Phillips, who is, so we have her up here. So Jess Phillips, who is the minister, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, what was her position again? So anyway, she's a key, I can't find it quickly here. She was one of the key positions, basically rejected it, right? So now she's since hit back at Musk for his attacks on her. So basically what happened is, so how did this all emerge? So in 2001, this started kind of coming out. So it says in 2001, names of taxi drivers who allegedly picked up girls from care homes in Rotherham. Sorry for the across the pond if I'm mispronouncing your names over there. I'd call it Rotherham here in America, but Rotherham I think is how you say it. To abuse them are passed to the police and council from 2001. The first convictions were not until 2010, with the latest in 2024, total 61. So 2004, a Channel 4 documentary about the claims that young white girls in Bradford were being groomed for sex by Asian abusers is delayed as police forces warned it can inflame racial tensions. It was finally shown 3 months later. So that's a theme that you're going to see throughout this entire discussion, is that there are people that have come forward, whether they're victims, family of victims, etc. They've come forward saying, look, my daughter, a 10-year-old daughter was abducted and raped by a gang of 16 different Pakistanis, or what they call Asian men, which what to look at that. Okay, why they call them Asian? Because for here, I'm not sure, maybe it's different over in the UK, but if you say that, hey, there's an Asian man that did XYZ, I think, okay, maybe he's Chinese or Malaysian or Taiwanese or Filipino, like that's, from Thailand. Again, to me, that's Japanese, Korean. Those are the Asian races. But what I'm seeing over and over again in investigating this is that they consistently refer to these people, the kind of perpetrators in this, as Asian men. And I'm not sure if that's normal, but from my own research, it looks like the vast majority are from Pakistan. So if I saw a guy from Pakistan, I wouldn't say, hey, there's a nice Asian guy. It's like, well, that guy's Middle Eastern or he's from Pakistan. Now, maybe, look, I'm just a kind of simple-minded American and I oversimplify things, but to me, someone from Pakistan isn't Asian. So again, it's also what you see here in America when there's, say, a black guy gets in a truck and runs over a bunch of people on a street. They will say a truck killed people. It's like, well, no. Or they'll say a man, unidentified killed people. Now, if he was white, they'd say a white man killed all these people. But if he's black, they say a truck killed people, right? It's the same thing, the same nonsense you see over there, right? So they're saying there that then these Asian men, by 2010, 11 were convicted. There's 2011, a journalist starts looking into it. Now it says, for here, 2011, a girl abused by a grooming gang in Huddersfield writes a letter to a judge about the abuse she had suffered. It was not until 2013 another victim came forward to the police to make formal allegations. Then dozens of girls and men were interviewed over the next 3 years. Victims and their families said they repeatedly told police and authorities, but nothing happened. 2011, there's an operation, Bullfinch, is launched by the police and the council in Oxford to look into a child sex abuse ring in the city. Then conviction started in 2013. So it continues. They've had some arrests, etc. So 2014, 13 men are convicted. 2017, 29 men are convicted. 2018, 20 men mainly of Pakistani origin, but the ringleader was Sikh, who were part of the Huddersfield Checks abuse ring, are convicted. And actually, I think I have here. So yeah, here is the gang. So keep in mind, they keep saying that these are Asian men. Well, here is the gang, right? So this is the gang of men, and just one arrest, they made of, I think there was about 20 people here. To me, these guys don't look Asian. They look Middle Eastern to me. I think they're mostly from Pakistan. So again, more hiding of information by saying, oh, it's these Asian people. Well, okay. But so continuing though with the timeline, as it gets continues, we get further down on, then we start seeing that this is when Elon Musk enters the conversation, and it becomes like one of the main talking points of Elon Musk. So here's a post by Elon. So this was actually today. I think this is from today or yesterday. Says Elon says Starmer was deeply complicit in the mass rapes in exchange for votes. That's what the inquiry would show. Now, here you have Keir Starmer says that he just claimed that people who want a full inquiry into Britain's rape gangs are, quote, jumping on a bandwagon of the far right. So wanting justice for thousands of British girls raped by Pakistani gangs is far right. All right, so here's a 27-second clip of Starmer defending himself and accusing people who want inquiries into these things as being far right, which I'm sure you've been called far right. I've been called far right for saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't trust these doctors like Fauci. And so, oh, you're far right. Okay, I guess I'm far right then. I'll play this for you. It's 27 seconds. This is his rebuttal.
And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth, and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right, then that affects politics, because a robust debate can only be based on the true facts. And when...
Yeah, so a robust debate can only depend on true facts, yet if you want an inquiry to figure out what the true facts are, you're far right. That seems to be the logic here. I mean, I'm not putting words in his mouth. This is what he's saying, but that's my interpretation of it. So Elon Musk also shared this. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this guy, if you've ever seen the documentary Europa. There's a rabbit hole for you. This is Ken O'Keefe, who happens to say a lot of things that make a lot of sense. You can do your own research. Anyway, it's interesting that Elon Musk shared this video of Ken O'Keefe, who happens to be one of the most prominent, you could call him a Holocaust denier or World War II revisionist or whatever it is, a guy who thinks that things didn't really happen the way we've been told they did around World War II. I'm not sure if Musk knew who he was sharing in that, but either way he did. So I will play this video. It's 39 seconds. I think he says the word bastard a few times. So if you've got kids watching, hey, awesome that your kids are watching Man in America. I try my best to be child friendly. However, he does say that word a couple of times in this. So just, cover their ears. Okay, here you go.
Now we've even got, what's his name? Keir Starmer, sir. That bastard excused Jimmy Savile. He's the one who signed off and said there wasn't enough evidence. That bastard is going to be the prime minister. So a guy who literally, who signed off and said not enough evidence of the man what we now know, Sir Jimmy Savile, who raped 500, while being greeted by the Queen and, BBC covering. Keir Starmer, is this acceptable? I'll tell you what, I'd rather die in the fight than bow to that crap. Like that now we...
Yeah, you got to love his conviction, though. I love any man that can sit there and say, look, I'd rather die than in fighting against this stuff, right? But if I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jimmy Savile, which you probably are because you're smart in your research, but if you're not, the very quick overview is he was a serial pedophile that was very, very close to the British crown. I guess he had even keys to the palace. I mean, this guy was on the inside. But he was also, what they found was that I think that what it was is that he had access to a children's home for mentally, unstable or mentally challenged kids, right? So these are kids that are, I'm not sure we use that word these days, but these are kids that were mentally disabled. Okay. And this guy, Jimmy Savile, had unlimited access to these kids. And I'm not sure, he says the 500, number, it's probably most likely more, but basically what they found out is this guy, was going through and just raping all these kids nonstop. The guy was a serial pedophile that was extremely close to the British crown. And so, what, Ken O'Keefe is saying in there and saying, look, that he's saying that Starmer was defending Savile, who we now know, and Savile is dead. And typically what you find is that a person like that dies, and then they can place the blame on him and say, oh, it was isolated, it had nothing to do, no one in the palace knew about it. Of course, right? Your fall guy is always great when they're dead, because that guy's he's not gonna come out and defend themselves or have anything else like that. So that's what Ken O'Keefe is saying there. But then continuing, so I want to just as I was reading about this, growing up, I always looked at London or England or the UK or these areas. I looked at them as kind of like America. It's like, okay, it's America, similar over there, some traditions and respect and everything. But I was reading this and I could not fathom what I read. It's sickening. And so I'll give you a warning. I'm not going to go into any kind of graphic detail, but some of this stuff is just hard to even think about. So what this guy here, Drew Pavlou said, he said the British state handed down just a 3-year prison sentence against the ringleader of a 24-hour-long gang rape attack against a 12-year-old. The British state has handed out longer prison sentences for Facebook posts. This is sick. And actually, sorry, I actually have a little thing I was going to show you. Here you go. All right, 21st century British justice. This guy, Sean Tuck, posted a racist comment on Facebook, and he got 15 weeks in prison. This guy, Sam Melia, sold anti-immigration stickers. He got 24 months in prison. And this other guy, Al Sawaimi, if I pronounce that right, raped a 12-year-old girl and got 180 community hours and no prison time. I mean, look, we look at the judicial system here in America and how they've the lawfare and how they've weaponized things against Trump and J6ers. And I mean, it's corrupted everywhere around the world, unfortunately, in most of these countries. But this is insane. Like I would say at least America has not got to the point where you're getting 24 months in prison for selling anti-immigration stickers. And we still do have our First Amendment, which is under attack constantly, but that's insane. That's insane. So going back to this, though, because I'm going to read this to you, because this just shows what these areas are like where this is happening. Like, this is just insane. Okay. So this is the examining the case of 12-year-old Samantha. It says a brief examination of the case of 12-year-old Samantha shows how the criminal justice system treats these kinds of cases, even when the CPS, now it's not CPS like in our country, Child Protection Services, the CPS this is what the Starmer was the head of. I think it's the Crown Protection Services. I think I'm not completely familiar with what it is, but some sort of governmental agency that is involved with justice, right? Okay, so even when it says even when the CPS has actually decided to proceed with prosecution. So on October 27, 2006, Samantha was abducted by 2 Asian men. Again, there you go, your Asian thing. So this girl, 12-year-old Samantha, was abducted by 2 Asian men who drove her around Oldham for hours and then raped her. They then threw her out of a moving car in the Chatterton area of Oldham. She ran away and asked another man for help. He invited Samantha inside and then dragged her upstairs and sexually assaulted her. She ran away whilst he was calling his friends to come and join him. At that point, a taxi driver and his passenger pulled up beside her to ask if she was okay. They said she looked very upset and like she'd been through hell, and so offered to take her to the police station and then home. They then took Samantha to a house on Attic Close, took her inside, then locked her in a room where 5 Asian men went on to rape her over and over for nearly 24 hours. The ringleader was Shaquille Choudhury, and he received a 3-year sentence for leading this extraordinary attack. This is just insane to think about, that she was abducted by 2 men. They drove her around, then they raped her. They threw her out of a moving car. She gets up. She asks another guy for help. He invites her inside, then drags her upstairs and sexually assaults her. While he's calling his friends to come over and join in on this fun, she escapes. So then a taxi driver picks her up, and he and his passenger tell her they're going to take her to the police station, but instead they take her to a house, took her inside where 5 men raped her over and over again for 24 hours. Like, and then the ringleader of this got 3 years. Like, this is absolutely sickening. It's absolutely sickening to think that this is happening. I mean, again, look, I cover human trafficking. I cover child sex trafficking quite a lot. It's unfortunately, I've come across way worse stuff than this, and it's just a sad state of our society. That's the thing, is it's a sad state of our world that this kind of stuff is happening. Absolutely crazy. And so to kind of dive in a little more, so there's this book that was written by this woman, Jane Senior, who was the main Rotherham whistleblower. So this is going to go through a few extracts from her book because It's called Broken and Betrayed. It says the true story of the Rotherham abuse scandal by the woman who fought to expose it. So again, the Rotherham abuse scandal, this was the big one that was a lot of the cover-up surrounding it and everything. So this goes into some more details. I'm just kind of skim through and read a few bits here because it really helps to paint the picture of what's going on. So it says when Jane grew up, Rotherham was still felt somewhat safe for children. She became a social worker with risky business, working with vulnerable girls. Her first case was a victim of a grooming gang. Okay, so at that time, they only knew about 21 girls involved with what was then wrongfully called child prostitution. Even in the 90s, children's homes had problems with Asian men in taxis preying on girls. The police did nothing. So again, like there's in this particular area specifically, one of the key methods that they would use was they'd have these taxi drivers, kind of driving around abducting little girls. I mean, that's just what was going on. Now they say it's the Asian men. Again, I don't get how they're calling these guys Asian, but maybe if you live in the UK, someone from Pakistan is considered Asian. I don't know. So continuing. So it said, even in the 90s, children's homes had problems with Asian men in taxis preying on girls. The police did nothing. Early efforts to alert the authorities led them to being told that by collecting info on potential abusers, it breached their human rights. By 2001, the abuse of the girls was shifting from Sheffield to Rotherham, with girls as young as 11 being targeted. It says the rape gangs would use younger relatives to groom the girls, acting as if they were their boyfriends and using the opportunity to gather intelligence on the girls. Then, once they were snared, they could be passed on to others. So when the father of Paula, a 14-year-old girl being abused by a rape gang, tried to warn them off by saying he owned a shotgun, the police told him off but did nothing about the abuse. And we see this over and over again. So it says one victim of the rape gangs was told she was dirty and made to convert to Islam, but still passed around for anal rape. Her abuser beat her and used her as a domestic slave while he watched jihadi videos with his friends. It says the main perpetrators were Asian men, many of them related to one another. Jane says some Asian men had no respect for white girls, but mentions a case of an Asian girl who's abused by a group who invited their brothers, uncles, and cousins to abuse her too. That's just sick. So Jane worked with a Muslim family man who was appalled by the abuse, but who said that the father of a friend had told him that white girls were there to practice on before getting married. So continuing, so here it says, when they started doing education in schools on sexual abuse, one head teacher asked if the Asian girls in the school should be excluded, because obviously they knew that it was something that wasn't affecting the immigrant girls. It was just affecting the white girls. It says the rape gangs were organized. They would use young men to groom girls before passing them on to older men. Takeaways and hotels were used for abuse, with taxis used to transport the girls around. Even under 18s, disco was infiltrated to groom more girls. It says Liana was homeless. Her abuser posed as a boyfriend and showed her a handgun to impress her. Within 3 weeks, he'd force her to have sex with his brother and threatened her with the gun to keep doing so. So confronted with all these cases, the social workers at Risky Business started collecting information, but when they noted that the abusers were almost all Asian, they were accused of being racist. So Jessica was in foster care even though her carer invited her abuser to tea. When her father tried to rescue her from the house where she was being abused, he made a racist comment. The police came out and arrested him and the intoxicated, semi-naked 14-year-old Jessica, but not the abusers. Jessica said that her abusers regularly used the race card against the police. So it continues and it continues, and it's just that there's so many stories. But again, what you find is that the basically it's the race card. It's like, oh, they don't want to disrupt the racial tensions and relationships in the UK or in Britain. So it's absolutely insane. So listen to this though. Okay, so a home office researcher worked with Risky Business to map the rape gangs, but one morning the team found the office had been broken into. Files had gone missing. The password-protected computer had been accessed and minutes tampered with. The culprits never been found. The researcher was told by senior management never again to refer to Asian men running the rape gangs and was sent to a 2-day ethnicity and diversity training course. So the person that is reporting to their superiors and saying, hey, it looks like there's these gangs of Asian men raping young girls, They send this person off to re-education. So they sent them off to a 2-day ethnicity and diversity training course. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. So it continues, and I'm not gonna kind of go in the details because it's some pretty just sick stuff, but it's absolutely crazy. Now, so here, okay, if we're wondering, okay, why aren't the police doing anything? This is one of the questions I would have. Okay, where's the corruption coming from? Well, so here's an interesting video. This is a video. This is an ex-police officer named Dion Miller stating that the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown sent a letter to all police forces regarding the grooming gangs, and they were told not to get involved. So watch this. This is about a minute 49 seconds, but watch this. You start to understand what's really going on here. I apologize on this video. There's some sort of weird bass, like hum, like thing that kind of continues. I couldn't get out of there. So I apologize for the audio being a little bit off, but it's not something on my end. It's just on the video.
A clip of an ex-police officer called Dion Miller has surfaced of her talking about a letter sent to all police forces around the UK by then, at the time, Prime Minister Gordon Brown. And the contents will truly shock you.
My name is Dion Miller. I'm an ex-police officer from Leicestershire Constabulary. During my service, I was awarded several letters of commendation. I received a Chief Constable's Commendation for Outstanding Service and was the recipient of a Bravery Award from the Prime Minister at that time, which I received at number 10 Downing Street. Thank you. I've not come here to speak to you today. I've come here to speak to them. Police officers of this country on the 19th of October 2018, and I hope you are listening. Former Chief Crown Prosecutor Mr. Nasir Afwaz stated in an interview to the BBC Radio 4 that in 2008 the Labour government under Prime Minister Gordon Brown and Home Secretary Jackie Smith sent a circular to all police forces in this country saying that as far as these young girls who are being exploited in town, we believe that they have made an informed choice about their sexual behaviour, and therefore it is not for you police officers to get involved in. Did you know that?
So basically what she's saying is that under Gordon Brown, there's a letter that was sent out. So you see a circular, maybe it was an internal notice, basically saying that any of these girls that are being raped by these grooming gangs, that they're saying that the official stance on it is that these girls they're consensual in this and they're giving permission, and so don't look into it. That's it. Absolutely sickening. So what's happening though to the people that are speaking out about this? So here you go. We talked about the I showed you before the graphic, right? Here you go. Sold anti-immigration stickers, 24 months in prison. Posted racist comments on Facebook, 15 weeks in prison. Okay, watch this. Okay, here is British justice at its finest. Check this out. 31 seconds.
Went on to say that you did not want your money going to immigrants who, quote, rape our kids and get priority. End quote.
So this guy put a post on Facebook saying that he didn't want his money going to immigrants that will rape their children and get priority. That's all he did. That's what he did. He put on Facebook.
Offence is so serious that an immediate custodial sentence is unavoidable. Would you stand, please? The sentence that I pass has been reduced by 1/3 to reflect your guilty plea. The sentence is one of 20 months imprisonment. Went on to say that...
Absolutely insane. It's crazy, though. He says, here, listen, the offense is so serious, right? So this guy put a post on Facebook saying that he didn't like immigration. He didn't want his money going to immigration, and the immigrants are raping their children, which I think we've now established a trend, and there is a lot of data showing that the Asian men have immigrated into London and these little areas and these little towns of Great Britain and whatever, that they are raping the kids. This guy, he says the offense is so serious, it's going to be immediate custody. So we're going to immediately put you into prison for 20 months.
Serious that an immediate custodial sentence is unavoidable. Would you stand, please? The sentence
gives him 20 months in prison. 20 months, right? Here you go. Absolutely crazy to think this is happening in what you would consider a first world country. It's obvious that there is some sort of massive corruption, infiltration. I'm sure there's so much blackmail going on, and that's the thing too. Is it makes me wonder. Here's something something makes me wonder too. Is are these grooming gangs involved in blackmail? Right? It's like, okay, why are the police covering up from them? Why are the police involved? It's a question I have. Are the police involved in these gangs? But also, are they compromising people? So are they taking these young girls, and obviously it seems like that they themselves, like these groups of Asian men, as they call them, have their enjoyment with these young girls, but are they also selling them to other people? Are they capturing footage of this stuff? Are they using it for blackmail purposes? Because that's oftentimes what you find. It's like, oh, I wonder why Epstein's list hasn't been put out there yet. And it's like, oh, well, probably because a lot of our politicians are on the list, and the people that control the media and control the social media and all this are on the list. And it's like, oh, I wonder why they're on the list. All because Mossad, right? Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell and everything. It's Mossad, CIA. They're very closely integrated, but of course, like they're gonna target the people that control the flow of information. They're gonna target people that control the levers of society, the politicians, the judges, the CEOs, etc. And they've got very, very, very developed blackmail operations. Right? Look at like Lolita Express and Epstein Island, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of this stuff. But there you go. But one of the questions, though, is, and I think this is something that's important for us to dig into, is what is it like? Why is it that in this culture rape is so prominent? Like, why? Like, there's got to be something deeper, right? Why is it that we're seeing this, again, looking at patterns here, that we're seeing these trends of these Middle Eastern, I'm going to call them Middle Eastern, not Asian, right? These Middle Eastern men coming in, is a lot from Pakistan, as it just seems to be coming up a lot as I'm researching this. Why is it that these particular individuals, oftentimes of a Muslim background, are the ones that are raping these young white women? How can we understand that? So I've got a little bit of research to help you understand some of that background. Right now, I will say here that I'm not coming out and saying, look, I am strongly anti-Islam. Right? I think that you can draw your own conclusions. Like I'm not, I don't practice Islam, right? Okay, surprise. But the point being, so I'll say just a few things, is that I think that there are evil people hidden within a lot of different religions. Okay, I think that even within Christians, there are a lot of evil people pretending to be Christians. They're actually doing really, really bad things. Now, like I know some Muslims. I know some Muslims that are wonderful people. So I would never say that, oh, because you're Muslim, you're a rapist or whatever. It's like, no, I used to travel a lot, used to go to Asia a lot, used to go to Hong Kong a lot. I have a lot of my clients that were Muslims, and they were good people. And I was welcome into their homes, and sat down and had tea with them. So I'm not saying that all Muslims are evil, right? But what I am pointing out here is, okay, well, how does this correlate? Like, what is it? Like, what's with these people that seem to be mostly practicing this one religion, and why they think it's okay to rape these other people? It's a valid question, right? So I want to pull up this post. This is from a guy named Paul Weston. He's an author who studied this stuff a lot. And this is interesting. He says, why do Muslim men rape and torture white girls in Britain? It's a good question. It's happening a lot. Might as well ask why. So what he says, because it is permitted in Islamic religion. He says countries controlled by Islam are called Dar al-Islam, or House of Submission / Peace. Countries not controlled by Islam are the Dar al-Harb, or the House of War. So he says that Britain is thus the house of war and will remain in a state of war until it is controlled by Islam. Muslim men can take sex slaves during a war against the kufir, infidel, disbeliever. And as the Prophet Muhammad decreed, girls aged 9 and above were available for penetrative sex. Very young English girls are considered to be legally available under Sharia law as sex slaves. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not making a statement. I'm just telling you what this guy has said, okay? So draw your own conclusions. So this guy's saying that they're legally, according to Sharia law, that they're legally available as sex slaves. It says, in order for a group of 30-year-old Pakistani Muslim males to get away with having consensual sex with a lone 9-year-old English girl, it does tend to help if the policeman who interrupts them is of the Sharia-compliant variety, which they now are and sadly have been for several decades. Those who support multiculturalism need to understand sex slavery is part of Islamic culture. If they continue to support multiculturalism, then they support gang rape and sex slavery. There can be no argument about this. Now, there's some interesting information to back this up. So one, here is a video. This is a female Islamist scholar who's now for those of you that are listening on the podcast, I'll read the subtitles just of this little short section here so you understand it. So she says, again, this is a female Islamist scholar who says, quote, that Allah allows Muslim men to rape non-Muslim women to humiliate them. If we fight infidels, we can take their women as sex slaves and rape them. Okay, so here she says, the female prisoners, I'm going to just turn the volume basically off. It says, the female prisoners of wars are those whom you own, she's saying. Continuing, in order to humiliate them, they become the property of the army commander or of a Muslim. And he can have sex with them just like he has sex with his wives. Right? So from the horse's mouth, okay, there you have one person. But also, I want to pull up this New York Times article talking about ISIS and how ISIS enshrines a theology of rape. So it says, claiming the Quran support, the Islamic State codifies sex slavery in conquered regions, Iraq and Syria, and uses the practice as a recruiting tool. So this is an article by the New York Times. This is back from 2015, but I find this to be very helpful in understanding just the cultural norms. Because as I was saying earlier, it's like, okay, we have our norms here in America, and people have different cultural norms all over, right? So in Haiti, for instance, where they practice voodoo, it's a culturally normal religious spiritual practice in Haiti to practice voodoo, and that involves, for some people that practice it, the sacrificing of cats and pigs and chickens and various animals. And so when you take that culture and you throw it into a small rural town in Ohio and people's pets start going missing, it's like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. Now, the thing is that in a lot of situations, I don't blame the immigrants. Of course, if they're raping people, it's like, okay, like to me, that's a red line. And like you cross that and like, okay, I'm blaming you for that action. But who's really at fault here fundamentally? Well, it's Satan, but it's these globalist controllers. It's the people they're doing this on purpose. They know, right? They know that if they take these people from this region and put them in this other region, there's going to be conflict, right? It's like when I was a little kid, I lived out in the country, and something I would do is we had, kittens, and kittens are fun to play with. We had this big cage that my dad built us. I think we caught a field mouse one time. So we built a cage to keep it in. We'd put the kittens in there and we'd throw in grasshoppers and insects, and the kittens would eat them. It was kind of like Gladiator as a kid. We loved watching it. You'd throw in a grasshopper and you'd watch this little cat eat the grasshopper. It was really fun to watch. But like, that's what these people are doing, right? So this cabal, these social engineers, that's what they're doing to us. It was like, oh, hey, let's put these grasshoppers over here in this cage over here, just see what happens. And what we're seeing is exactly what we're seeing. So getting into this article, because this actually helps understand a little more the cultural background of why there's this rape culture. So this is in Iraq, and this is a certain region that was conquered in this certain area that was, I think, captured by ISIS, or whatever you want to kind of. Not sure exactly which sect of people it was, but it's kind of built around ISIS. So anyway, continuing. So in the moments before he raped the 12-year-old girl, the Islamic State fighter took the time to explain that what he was about to do was not a sin. Because the preteen girl practiced a religion other than Islam, the Quran not only gave him the right to rape her, it condoned and encouraged it, he insisted. So it says he bound her hands and gagged her. Then he knelt beside the bed and prostrated himself in prayer before getting on top of her. When it was over, he knelt to pray again, bookending the rape with acts of religious devotion. So, quote, I kept telling him it hurts, please stop, said the girl, whose body is so small an adult could circle her waist with two hands. I hate even imagining that. Like, this stuff just, it's so sickening to me. I'm sorry I'm having to cover this stuff, but we have to talk about these things. So, quote, he told me that according to Islam, he is allowed to rape an unbeliever. He said that by raping me, he is drawing closer to God, she said in an interview alongside her family in a refugee camp, which she escaped after 11 months of captivity. So it says the systematic rape of women and girls from the Yazidi religious minority has become deeply enmeshed in the organization and the radical theology of the Islamic State in the years since the group announced it was reviving slavery as an institution. Interviews with 21 women and girls who recently escaped the Islamic State, as well as an examination of the group's official communications, illuminate how the practice has been enshrined in the group's core tenets. The trade in Yazidi women and girls has created a persistent infrastructure with a network of warehouses where the victims are held, viewing rooms where they're inspected and marketed, and a dedicated fleet of buses used to transport them. So this is, again, here's another person talking right here, saying, every time that he came to rape me, he would pray, says F, a 15-year-old girl who was captured on the shoulder of Mount Sinjar 1 year ago and was sold to an Iraqi fighter in his 20s. Like some others interviewed by the New York Times, she wanted to be identified only by her first initial because of the shame associated with the rape. He kept telling me this is his ibadah, she says, a term from Islamic scripture meaning worship. So this is what's happened is that the people that have taken these scriptures and they've turned them completely evil are now using their religious doctrine as an excuse for why they can rape. I mean, it's absolutely just insane. So he says, he said that raping me is his prayer to God. I said to him, what you're doing to me is wrong. It will not bring you closer to God. And he said, no, it's allowed. It's halal. So the teenager who escaped with the help of smugglers. So I'm not going to continue because it goes into more detail, but I think it's an important point to look at what is happening within this culture. And so if you're bringing these Muslims, and let's just say that there's some of them that are much more extreme and they're very immoral. If these people believe that, say, these Pakistani men that are running these grooming gangs in, over in Europe, if they believe that they are in a holy war and that the country that they're living on is not a country that's run by the Islamic State, therefore they are at war with their country. If their religion, if their religious doctrine that they've come to interpret in a way that they believe that it's actually okay to rape the young children, the young women and women in this country because the country is not an Islamic country, so they're at war, like as the one guy said here, right? As Paul Weston said. So if they believe this, right, that the Muslim men can take sex slaves during a war against the disbelievers, and they believe that, it starts to make sense on why there is this culture of rape. Because it's almost like, we look at these elites, these Luciferian elites, however you want to refer to them, right? This cabal. You look at them, you think, gosh, like these people are completely psycho whack jobs. They worship Satan. In their own minds, they I'm not going to say I know exactly, but I believe that they believe that Lucifer is the real God. So who they're worshiping is the real God, and Jesus or any other religious figure to them is the false God. And so from their perspective, they think that they're just doing what God wants them to do, and they're fulfilling them, and they're probably more devoted to their religion and their spirituality than most people on earth. But just so happens to be that they're following an evil path, which is then teaching them that, oh, it's actually okay to exterminate billions of people, and it's all about the future, and all the globalist and new world order stuff that you're probably very familiar with if you're watching this show. But if you look at, again, you look at these people coming in, these Muslims coming, if they genuinely believe that their religious doctrine says that they're allowed to rape people, like, they're not going to listen to local laws. Like if I had a certain religious belief and I really believed in my core of my being, if I'm in a different country, my religious belief supersedes that country's laws. Now, thankfully, my beliefs are like, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not, cause harm, do unto others as they do to yourself. Like my own perspective is like, I need to be a good person. And I believe that very strongly, but it's like in their mind, they believe that this is their way of being a good person. Like, it's so twisted. But this is where the world is at. And so I think, again, looking at this overall discussion, it's not a topic I like to focus on. I mean, it's a sad thing, but we have to draw attention to these atrocities that are happening. We have to bring light to them. And, while I disagree with a lot of what Elon stands for, especially more recently, if you look at the censorship and a lot of things going on there, which is a whole different show, I am happy to see that he's drawing attention to these things. Now, I also think that he's probably focusing on this, so you're not looking at what this hand's doing over here. And so I have my concerns. And, okay, why is Elon all of a sudden hyper-focused on the situation with the Muslim rape? I also think that maybe it's part of this overall plan to get people to focus on, hey, focus on the Muslims, don't focus on this other religion, right? And so, draw your own conclusions with that. But again, it's important for us to understand what's happening in the world, because we have to expose these things. We have to, like, right now, the world is going through this process of really awakening. And there's obviously a lot of very negative elements and negative evil control that is still very deeply ingrained in our society. But I think fundamentally, though, there is this mass awakening that's happening where people are realizing how evil these politicians are, how corrupted a lot of our world is, and people are fighting back against it, which is encouraging to me. So I do appreciate that about what Elon is doing, is that he's shining the light on areas of darkness. And while I agree there's a lot of areas of darkness that I think that he's intentionally keeping the light off of, he's still exposing some of the darkness in this world that we need to be exposing. Now, I know that I apologize. This was a little more of a heavy episode. I warned you in the beginning, this is not one of the feel-good episodes, but I do have something I was going to show you as we're concluding the show. Something I came across that is, I think, a really good video to watch. And it's about gratitude. So I'm going to pull this up for you. And this is very different than the rest of the discussion. Now, I'll read this because for those that are listening on the audio podcast, they're not going to be seeing this text here. But I just want to walk through this. It's 30 seconds. I'm going to play it twice. I hope you can really focus on this and look at this message. It's important. So it says, the billionaire in a private jet who misses the old days. The multimillionaire flying first class who wants a private jet. The businessman in a fancy sports car dreaming of becoming a millionaire. The employee in a cheap old car who wants a fancy... Sorry, I didn't read that fast enough. The employee in a cheap old car who wants a fancy sports car. The unemployed cyclist who just wants a job in a cheap car. The pedestrian who wishes he had a bike so he had to walk everywhere. The paralyzed man in a wheelchair who would give everything to walk again, all while the terminally ill's only wish is to be healthy. It says you never stop wanting more until you learn to be grateful having things instead of getting them. So I'll play it one more time. I'm not going to read over it again. So for podcasts, I apologize. But for those of you that are watching, read this and just let it sit in. it's such an important message there, and I'll share my thoughts on it and why I felt that it was important even to show you is because the saying is always greener. The billionaire in a private jet who misses the good old days, the millionaire flying in first class who wishes he had a private jet, the guy that's driving in a sports car that wishes he could fly in the private jet, the guy driving some crappy car that wishes he had a sports car, the person that is on a bicycle because they can't afford a car that would give anything for a crappy car, the person that is just a walking pedestrian that can't even afford a bicycle, right? Then there's the person that's paralyzed that can't even walk. And then you have the person that's sick and terminally ill that isn't even healthy. And it's a good point. And I find that within my own life that there's been times where I've been focusing on, okay, what's the next thing I want to get? And what I've found though is actually that the next thing I want to get, I end up getting it and it doesn't make me any happier. Oftentimes I feel worse after getting it. It's like, oh, actually, why'd I put so much focus on this? Think it's going to make me happy. And I've learned that just being happy is focusing on what I have. And of course, like I'm getting new things and, I'd like to get a motorcycle again. And I love motorcycles and, I have my own little wants and desires and whatnot, but it's an important lesson that I take and I try to live my life this way, just to be grateful for every day. Like I should be grateful for the fact that I'm sitting here in a healthy body. I can breathe, my legs work, my heart works, my voice works, my mind is still sharp. And I should be so grateful for that and just thankful that God gave me this body, right? And, or, with my children or when I'm like, putting my kids to bed or doing bath time, or even when my daughter comes in covered in dog poop because she was being careless and she stinks like a dog and I got to scrub her, or more likely my wife Kate has to scrub things and I have to give her a bath. Either way, it's just this lesson of we're always going to want something that we don't have. And it's been my experience that happiness is learning to be grateful for what you do have. And actually, I find that being grateful for the most simple things is actually what brings me the most happiness. Being able to go sit on my front porch during a thunderstorm and being grateful for that and just focusing on that moment. Or looking into my little, 11-month-old, my little daughter Grace, looking into her eyes as she's smiling at me and laughing. It's these beautiful little moments that that's where happiness lies for me, at least. So anyway, I like that. I hope that you enjoy that as well. As we're concluding, I just want to thank you very much for being here with me tonight. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit that green follow button. That's an important one. If you're watching on YouTube, I encourage you to come watch over on Rumble, because most of my content doesn't get put up on YouTube because I get strikes. Maybe this show will get a strike because it's not culturally sensitive. I don't know, maybe. I'm not sure. But anyway, please support Rumble. It's a free speech platform. Great folks over there. Also, just getting into, just one other sponsor I want to mention, which is Balance of Nature. So let me pull up the website for you really quickly there. So Balance of Nature. So these guys are fantastic. They've got these fruit and veggie capsules that are super, super, super healthy for you, long shelf life. And so my, actually perspective even from prepping nature is I've got a whole shelf of Balanced Nature stuff, because if I'm in a place where I can't get access to fruits and vegetables, I've got them in these little capsules. And obviously having a fresh piece of fruit is better than a capsule, but they're basically these capsules of freeze-dried fruits and vegetables. So, and actually freeze drying, we own a freeze dryer. Freeze drying is what preserves the most nutrients of any process of preservation. So whether you're canning, dehydrating, whatever it is, freeze drying preserves the most nutrients. So again, it's balanceofnature.com. We got a promo code. I think my promo code is, let me check my notes real quick. So Seth is my promo code. And right now, so we have a New Year's deal going on with them. So if you use discount code Seth, you'll get 35% off, free shipping. Plus, they'll give you a free fiber and spice supplement, right? So it's a limited New Year's promotion, but you must use the discount code Seth, S-E-T-H. So you call them at 800-2468-751, or balanceofnature.com. And again, use that promo code Seth to get 35% off, plus that free fiber and spice supplement. And again, for me, this is a good prepping supply, right? And I've got these jars, or these bottles of freeze-dried fruit and veggies in little capsules. It's great, right? So if there's a grid down scenario and you don't have access to this stuff, at least you've got some basic vitamins and nutrients coming in from that. So, all right, folks, this is the end of tonight's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, please share, please help spread the content. Also, I'd love to hear your comments. So if you want to comment in the description below, I always read the comments. I really appreciate them. I love the feedback I get from all of you. And just, again, keep your head up. I know that this is some dark stuff we're covering here, but it's good that we're talking about because we're bringing light to it. And we have to shine light in all the darkest areas. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm sure it's what you're doing in your life. And I thank you for being along with me. And I'll see you tomorrow night. I've got, I think, another good interview I'm publishing. We've got some great content coming out, some really good stuff that's coming out. So, all right, folks, thank you so much. Have a wonderful, blessed night. And I will see you again soon. Take care and God bless.